Welcome to the Real Estate Experience with myself, Sterling White. Thanks so much for tuning in to these episodes. And if there's any questions that you happen to have or something you would want me to further elaborate on, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And today's subject is going to be the 4 questions to ask if you plan to raise money for your deals or just real estate in general. But we'll say deals because there is tons of moving parts that it may be good for others and it may not be good for another individual. It really just comes down to what you're looking to do long term. Myself is I do raise money for my specific deals, and I'll just do some experience sharing of these questions, and I'll go into some details and provide some real examples, because that's one thing I have heard that people really do enjoy on these is the actual case studies and the pulling back the curtain and behind the scenes of real life examples. Myself is I focus primarily on the marketing at my company and then also the acquisitions. So marketing meaning branding the company and also bringing investors on board. And then on the acquisition side is just constantly getting kicked in the face with owners that are not interested in selling, and then also converting them to being interested through multiple follow-ups. And then on the networking and with the brokers and nurturing those relationships to have deals sent over. On the side of brokers, just have not had it pencil out just yet, but just never know what deal ends up coming through. So you just have to constantly just keep nurturing those relationships. And that's why it's always good to have a large enough pipeline on the top. That way you'll be able to narrow down and be able to find a deal that does pencil out and work for your numbers. So I know that you may be experiencing that as well, that you're receiving deals or you're looking at ones that are on the market and just there's no way that what it's currently listed at, it's going to actually sell for that, and it ends up selling one thing way over what you would have paid for it. So one thing is just you got to look at multiple deals in order to find one, and not have, from personal experience, more of an abundance mindset and have a lot of leads at the top of the funnel to ultimately convert to close. So there's that. And then if you're just now coming across me for whatever reason, and those of you who are listening while you're taking a shower, or maybe you're taking a poop and listening to me, or looking at me on YouTube or Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't already. But myself, born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, 28 years old, born on the east side of town, where a lot of people do not like to go on that side, and those who do live there always looking to get out of that and stay far away from it as they can. But there's definitely some good parts on the east side of town, but more bad parts. So I grew up in the bad parts, where one of the apartments that I happened to live in, there was constant gunshots that I overheard in the environment, and it got so accustomed to it that it sounded like fireworks. But that's unfortunate in itself. But myself, when I was in that type of environment, it didn't seem as bad as what it was, because that's all that I knew at that time. But had a single mother that raised both my twin brother and I. I am fraternal. Yes, I am a twin. Fun fact for those of you who do not know that. We are completely different shades. He's darker than me. I would say not Wesley Snipes dark, but he is definitely darker than I am. And grew up in Section 8 housing, so subsidized, and welfare food stamps. And anything above and beyond that is I had to figure out a way to earn money. So this is where the whole entrepreneurship came into existence. First product, Kool-Aid. Second was Pokemon cards. And then to shift how I got started into real estate, which I was going to college at the time, human biology major. Have no clue why I chose a human biology major. I guess in high school I had good grades and was good in science, so just decided to, okay, well, I'm going to go up for a human biology degree. I took chemistry 1 and 2 a total of 5 times. So that just goes to show you that school wasn't for me, and was more interested in business. So ended up dropping out my 5th year on a 4-year degree. But enough of that. So at that time I was in construction, the early days of college, got my hands dirty in that for a couple years. as a laborer, huge respect for those guys, but that's where I fell in love with real estate, and then shifted more to the investing side and of single family homes. Found my mentor, bought first property for $25,000, put additional $25,000 into it, and then purchased a house across the street, single family house for $40,000, put $5,000 into it, and this was no money out of pocket at that time. And through that is ended up scaling up to 150 or so single families, and then just over the past couple years entirely moved to multifamily, where predominantly is 75 to 200 unit apartments that are in working class settings between the unit count of 75 to 200 units, which I had already mentioned, I believe. I meant to say the rents are between $600 to $850. So working class, blue collar type neighborhoods, C-class assets, so older built. But that's what I really love to mention to people. If you have that focus of what your criteria is, that allows you to have that sniper approach versus a shotgun when you're targeting, and that goes that much farther when you're nurturing the leads, because you're not having ones that fall through the cracks because you're going for so many. That has always worked for me, is one thing I mentioned, and is the way to stay top of mind of these owners, because in today's market many are not interested in selling. You have to stay top of mind through many follow-ups to convert from not interested to then interested, or just be there when they are ready. Prime example, husband and wife in Cincinnati, Ohio, had a property. Initial point of contact mentioned they would never be interested in selling. Several months later, unfortunately, facing a divorce. Myself did not follow up. I followed up 4 or 5 months later to turn out that it was under contract, and that person ended up closing on it at a later point. But still was following up just to ensure that has it closed, or is there any changes by chance? But I believe that person ended up overpaying, but still, that just gives you a prime example. Anything can change. And so additionally, on top of that, is have just under 500 units. That's comprised of multifamily as well as single family. And one thing I want to allude to is there is a team involved. It's just not myself. I'm one of the operators of the company along with my partner, and we have been able to put the right people in place to allow us to focus on the highest value activities. And I still make mistakes to this day. I've had successes, and I'll be sharing these mistakes as a way for you to avoid the pitfalls and potholes that I've experienced. And same what I was able to do, draft along my mentor and figure out, take his 20 years of experience in this industry and compact into the 2 and 2.5 years I worked with him. So let's jump right into the questions. All right, so the first question is, who do you want to raise capital from? So determining this is whether that is a debt investor, whether that's someone who's more interested in equity investments, and even getting as narrow is determine what their profile is as a person. Let's say it's a male that has the income 200,000 plus that lives in the West Coast, because through this helps you on your marketing by reverse engineering that, meaning that determining where their eyeballs are and where their ears are to be to essentially provide your pitch. Whether that is you're doing digital marketing, as essentially what I'm doing in a way, content marketing being of value, or you can do more of a outbound side and call these individuals as a way to give your pitch and mention what the service that you provide. And then also the other route on that is attending local real estate meetups, is determining where these individuals could be. And it may not even be a real estate meetup. It could be a local golf country club. So there's many mechanisms, but if you're able to determine who the person is that you're raising money from, that allows you to figure out how to go get it. And with that is another flip side to this is screening out the people who would not be a good fit for you. Prime example myself is focus more on bringing equity partners that are more on the long term. So always have a phone call prior to someone investing, meaning just to determine if the interests are aligned. one of the questions is, what are you looking to achieve long-term? What's your long-term goal? If someone mentions that I want to get my cash in and out as quickly as possible, then that individual would not be a good fit. I know just starting out, you want to accept money from as many people as you want, but that could be a headache in the long run if you're looking to hold on to a deal for the long term and someone's looking to get their capital out. It's just not going to be a good fit. That's just experience sharing on that. And the second question is how much you will offer your investor. So there's tons of ways to go about this, metrics, whether that is a 10 to 12% cash on cash, between a 16 to 20% internal rate of return, or a 3x or 4x multiple upon the exit. So that's just one way is you can do the research to see for, let's say you're investing in properties in B neighborhoods, that you would figure out what are other operators providing to their investors to see what is being offered. And then that's one thing that when you're sourcing deals and doing your underwriting and backing into whatever your purchase price and your offer is, including whatever the renovations or your investment plan is, that you would know you need to get your investors this amount based upon that is what they're seeing in the marketplace. So that's one thing that my partner and I do, is that when we're doing our underwriting on our models, is if it's under a specific cash on cash and also IRR, then we need to figure out, most likely through a lower offer, in order to get it to that point. Because on our side, many people will do some other things that are a little bit more interesting and say that, okay, well, I can push up the rent by more than, I'm just going to bank more on being able to push up the rents in order to be able to get my investors that return, because I'm not able to go back to the seller or provide the seller a lower offer because they're firm at their purchase price. That's where you can get in trouble. That's best to just walk away and go on to the next deal. Just experience sharing on that. So that's one way, is just doing the research and seeing what others that have similar product to what you're looking to provide to investors, and see what returns they have there. And then that's when you can provide something better or provide something that is comparable, preferably better, because you'll be able to get more investors in that way, is most likely how that'll work out. All right, and the next is what legal structure you plan to go with. When you have one investor partner, simple joint venture, it's a lot seamless and straightforward that way. But when you're raising money from 30, 70, hundreds of investors on one deal, then that is when you really want to have your I's and T's dotted and crossed. Because when you're dealing with securities, it is very serious, and you don't want to end up in securities fraud because you miss one minor step. And with that, there's plenty of ways that, so just give you a prime example, you're not able to just simply go out there and say, I have a apartment that you pay me or you invest with me $100,000, I will give you a 8% return on the cash on cash, and then once I sell, you'll get a 3 times multiple on your capital. That's a huge no-no if you don't have your I's and T's dotted and crossed, because there's ways that when you general solicit, you can go only after accredited investors, and then if you don't general solicit, then you can target both accredited and non-accredited. But there's different regulations, and Reg A Plus is one that allows you to general solicit. There's just regular Reg A, but don't quote me on those. Not an attorney. That's why it's always best to seek their advice. But speaking from experience, if you're able to do your research beforehand and about the various structures and what you're looking to do, go after non-accredited and both accredited investors, and be able to general solicit or not general solicit. If you have that already in your arsenal, and then go get further insights to an attorney on how you can structure that and what you can and cannot do, then that'll go a lot longer way versus just going straight to an attorney from ground zero. But on my side, I do have a partner in my business that does coordinate more on the legal side, luckily, and just to ensure that how we're raising money is compliant, because do not want to get hit with securities fraud by any means. That is very serious. So coordinate with the attorney. There's tons out there. There's several out there, but ensure that if you do go with the attorney, that they specialize in what you're looking to do, meaning that not getting an attorney that practices, let's say, family law and do dabble a little bit into legal structures for SEC. That could be a little bit of a slippery slope. All right, and last but not least is the question of how you will design a efficient system to be able to raise money. So having everything documented, just experience sharing, allows you to scale things and be that much more efficient. So I'll give you a prime example is myself always put up a example deal for individual partners to go and place a reservation, which is non-binding, that says if I have XYZ deal that has this specific returns, then they mentioned they would invest this amount. Because what that does is that allows you, and this depends on how you're raising money as well. Some people like to do the fund route where they already have raised the money and then they go out and buy deals. But others like myself identify a property, secure it, have it under contract. As long as assumptions, there's no red flags, got the green light, then that's when the capital raising starts. But with that, you can be on a thin timetable, meaning that the closing could be within 30 to 45 days and you're having to scramble for cash. And that could be $3 million, $10 million, more than that, or even less than that as well. So if you have those reservations, which some people, you could actually have someone wire the money. I haven't taken that route. Just do more of the soft commitments, that you have all of the individuals, the partners that have placed the reservation. Then you can go back to them and say, hey, we now have this deal that's official and this is what it's going to look like. Here are the documents. And that way they're more ready to go versus you just having to scramble for cash and start from scratch. And the second is doing a webinar. And a webinar is just giving a overview on the deal itself, meaning that this is why you like it. This is going to be the business plan, for example, meaning that over the course of the first 2 years, you're going to be repositioning the property. So after it's more stabilized, you're going to do a refinancing year 3 and then return your partners their capital back. And they're still going to have ownership in the deal. So, and there's many other things that you want to cover as well. And then lastly is you have open Q&A. So this webinar is live. Investors can visit, submit their questions, and you'll get some tough ones. So be ready and go as detailed. Investors really do like to hear the detail on specific deals, understand the operations, how you will be managing it, etc. Another one is providing all the information to your partners for the due diligence. One thing I always mention is that you want your partners to do, or your investors to do, their own due diligence outside of it, but providing the financials. I mean, this is how the property is currently operating at, and this is what we're looking to do within our business plan, meaning that it's 150 units. Within year 1, we plan on being able to renovate 50 of those, push them up to the increased rents, and then over the remaining, we plan on increasing the other rents as those leases become expired. On that side, providing the financials, that way investor partners can do their own analysis and underwriting. And for the marketing docs, for instance, these are the outdated units and these are the upgraded units, and be able to showcase that. But all through this process on those, being able to provide all of those offering documents to your partners, is this goes into documenting, as I alluded to as well, because there's tons of moving parts that can be involved in that. So if you're able to document it, and then that way you're that much more efficient next time moving around versus trying to remember everything from memory. So that's it on the 4 questions to ask yourself. First is, who do you want to raise capital from? That way you can reverse engineer and find those investors. Second is how much will you offer your partners, which you can get this from research and seeing what's being offered in the marketplace. Thirdly is what legal structure you will go with. This is very important. Don't want anyone who's listening to this podcast to be hit with securities fraud. That would not be fun whatsoever. And then lastly is how would you design a efficient system to be able to raise this money in. As I alluded to, some people like to go the route, use their own capital or maybe just one individual, versus others want to scale, go that much faster, so they go for a larger amount of investor partners to bring on board so they can really ramp things up. All right, so we're going to go into a book recommendation, which is a negotiating book. The only negotiating guide you'll ever need, because I feel that in everyday life you're negotiating, not just in business but even personal relationships. Just speaking from experience on that, I'll give you a prime example with my daughter who's 6 years old. I even negotiate with her, teaching her those lessons. And it's like as soon as she was born, I started to lose hair, and she got all of it. She's got hair like Tarzan. But if she wants to go out on a trip, or let's say she wants a toy, so I'll negotiate and say, yes, more than happy to get you that toy, but you have to do this, this, and this. And with that, she'll say, I don't know about that, but if I'm able to get a toy that's priced between something a lot higher, a more cooler toy, then I'll do this, or I'll be able to do this and this, whether that's make her bed or clean the kitchen. Just little things like that is negotiating that I'm teaching her. But that's in the personal relationship. So now shifting over to the business side, on an apartment that I purchased that was an 80 unit in Louisville, Kentucky, how the negotiations worked on that is after doing the inspections, red flags came up that the decks needed to be more properly secured, and there was also some foundation issues that were going on. Not so much foundation, there was some subflooring that needed to be addressed, but the costs associated with that and some additional repairs that we absolutely did not foresee coming came up close to $300,000. So one negotiating technique was that the seller would fix those, would make those repairs. We would close at the current agreed upon purchase price. And the second option was I complete the repairs after closing, of course, on the specific property. But then the seller would reduce the purchase price by $200,000. So that was the second option. And the last one was to completely walk away from the deal entirely. So that was a negotiating tactic in itself, and framed it properly, gave them multiple options, and they ended up picking the second, which was just simply providing a credit at closing. So simply just reduce the purchase price of the deal. But I do truly appreciate everyone who is on these episodes. If you happen to have any questions, do not ever hesitate to reach out. And if you haven't already, grab a free copy of the book, From 0 to 400 Units. Thank you so much. Catch you on the next episode. Have a great one. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.